allowing members of the public to join this meeting via Zoom or via the telephone. And comments can also be sent in by email to publiccomment@yarmouth.ma.us. I will now take a roll call vote to enter into a meeting quorum and to start the meeting. Dan Horgan.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. We are now in our meeting, and our first order of business is to join in a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first item of business after the pledge is public comments. So Kyle, why don't you give me a hand here and identify who is seeking recognition?
Yep, first up is Miss Mary Vilbon.
Okay, Mary.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mary Vilbon, Executive Director for the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking my comments this evening. I wanted to let everybody know, in partnership with the town of Yarmouth, Care for Cape and the Islands, and Dennis Chamber of Commerce and the Friends of Bass River, we held our annual cleanup day on Saturday. We had over 81 people that registered for the event. While it was not the ideal weather conditions, I have to say the residents were great troopers. They went out there, they collected as much trash as they could. And we want to send out a special thank you to the Yarmouth DPW for picking up the trash at 3 different sites throughout town. So while it was a different event, a virtual event, we think it was very successful. And we'd like to remind our residents that, you know, while we do this as an annual event, it's so important to be conscious of where your trash is going. Secure your loads when you're driving to the dump, and please do not dispose of your trash outdoor of your car windows. We also wanted to let you know, Mr. Chairman, that our visitor center has been open. We have not closed except for January for 3 weeks. We are open Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. We do sell beach dump recycling and shellfish stickers here. In a typical season pre-COVID, we had sold 540 stickers annually. That would be the entire season. We have already sold 727 stickers as of today. I would like to thank Bob Lawton for coming up with a plan at Town Hall to help alleviate the pressure that was being put on our staff for the last month. So thank you very much, Bob. The positive thing in doing this, we had over 1,000 people come in the visitor center in March alone. And by doing that, our residents actually got to see what the chamber does here day to day, gets to see the information we have about all the great things in Yarmouth. And I would encourage every one of our select board member and town staff to come in and see what the chamber does, because many of you, of our residents had never seen this before. And my last quick comment is that this is April vacation. And if you haven't noticed, there is a lot of traffic here on the Cape, a lot of people that are here. This beautiful weather has definitely brought people to visit us. We ask that everyone be polite and patient when they are going to patronize our businesses, because they are understaffed and they are working diligently to make their experience pleasurable for everyone. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next up to speak is Mr. Joe Glynn. I'm sorry, before you begin, Joe, did you want to speak, Bob, on this point?
Just as a follow-up to Marion, I appreciate her thanking me, but really the thanks for the sticker change at Town Hall goes to Ed Centio, Sue Ripley, and to Stacy, who's manning the desk. They came up with the idea. We obviously all approved it, but it's worked out very well, and I'm glad it's taken some of the pressure off the chamber, because they did have a very difficult time over the past couple of months in selling the stickers. So I just wanted to clarify that, to give them credit where credit was due.
Thanks for clarifying that, Bob. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Glenn, you've got the floor.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if the selectmen and/or the town clerk's office has committed promoting any of the annual town election and the important override and ballot questions. My concern is that this is going to be a very poor representation of the townspeople with the election preceding the town meeting this year. So a lot of times, as you know, there's kind of a buildup and candidates and issues are talked about at town meeting. And then it reminds everybody that that we're going to have an election coming up. With it being flip-flop this year, and the importance of those ballot questions, and of course the election itself, and the lack of national and state buildup and no ballots being mailed out, request forms being mailed out. I'm really concerned that this is going to be, instead of in some places, 60, 70, 80% turnout, it's going to be a single digit turnout, which makes those ballot questions not a fair representation of the town. So I'm wondering if there's anything that we can do, getting those, we bought that message trailer and we have that message board, maybe get that out across from the drive-in site like it was done when they were promoting events, or, up and down 28, maybe, I know they have the sign at the, Mary Vilbon's, the chamber location and at the high school, but really to promote it and even do, one of those, like we do with the COVID, the call outs in using that message thing. I think it's real important for the town. I don't think anybody would disagree that elections are important and those votes are important to taxpayers and to citizens. And I'm just wondering if we can promote it, because there's no year build up for, the national media, the state media, the big TV stations, and even locally, the local weekly papers and the Cape Daily papers. They aren't putting the focus on these local elections, and certainly not to the extent that they did the national elections and last year. So I'm afraid there's going to be this voter fatigue, but worse, that people just aren't going to have the knowledge of the town election being on the 18th with no buildup or no conversation about it. So I'm wondering if we could get something and do a call out, like we do for snowstorms or the weekly COVID things, because those issues, if there's a snowstorm coming, the news media has it, the big channels and the mainstream media has it, and they're letting the Cape know that we're getting a snowstorm. And the same thing with the other elections, but they don't know about these town elections, and it's really going to be a bad turnout, and I'm afraid of that because it's not a good representation.
No,
and these are important issues. So maybe, hopefully,
thanks for your comment, Joe.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
have a great night.
And this will come up at our next meeting. I want to welcome our town administrator with us tonight. Good to see you, Robert. Let's see if we have anybody else. Mr. Tierney, welcome. Do you have a public comment?
How are you?
Good.
Good. Just a couple of quick things on the schools, just so you guys know. Of course, it was mentioned before that it is school vacation, so there's no buses roaming around or anything like that. But they'll be back up and running next week. And the good news is I heard from the high school that the high school seniors will be having a lot of those activities that high schoolers normally do for their senior activities. So that's a positive thing. That's a real big step. I think the seniors last year missed out on a lot, and I think this year is going to be, they're hoping to do a lot more with them. So that's a good thing. Just a quick new school update. The contractor is starting to put in place some perimeter fencing around the school. So if you see some trucks roaming around with fencing and whatnot, that's those guys putting that stuff up. So it's the very beginnings of the project. So on another quick note, I was in a candidates forum on Saturday afternoon with about 40 or 50 residents, and there was a discussion on town meeting, and they had the date wrong. I texted a couple of the selectmen here as just to confirm the date, and I forwarded the correct information onto them. But I believe on the website it's not correct, or at least it wasn't as of yesterday. And I was looking on the website just before I listening to public comment, and it seems like it's not correct. So I don't know if somebody can change it, because we need to have people show up on the wrong day and whatnot. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We'll look into that right away. Appreciate that. I'm going to go back to Kyle. Kyle, any written comments submitted to the board that need to be read into the record?
Yeah, we do have one, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
This is from Miss Vita Morris. So she has 5 points here. Number one, when she says, my thoughts have to do primarily with the petitioned article dealing with plastic water bottles. When school committee discussions started in late summer with regard to reopening of schools, the first thing to be closed down were the water coolers on school premises. This, very understandably so, since their continued use would have constituted a super spreader of the virus. So the pandemic exposed a serious flaw in the proponent's article. Temporary exemptions will not cure the problem. That presupposes that manufacturer keeps a set aside, just waiting for DY to call when they need water. Point number two, keep in mind that DY is a regional district, presumably requiring both towns to assent to the proposal. What happens to this exercise with regard to schools if one town goes one way and the other goes the other way? Number three, is this the kind of proposal that really rises to the level of a bylaw? The board should review the procedures for introducing bylaws and consider changes. Increasing the number of signatures required for such petitions might be just a first step in the right direction. Number four, shouldn't the proponents be required to give cost estimates for implementing the proposed bylaw? In view of the current economic situation, why would anyone think it appropriate to increase the town's financial and workload burdens? Number five, I was under the impression that a town meeting is a forum strictly for its residents. As such, is it appropriate to import an outside professional agitator to participate in the meeting as a presenter? Doesn't that sort of imply that the local people are incapable of doing their own presentation? Now it seems that the solar panel brigade is joining the water bottle group to impose their views on the rest of us by force of law. It's getting out of control. Signed, Vita Morris.
Okay. Any other comments, Kyle?
No, Mr. Chairman.
That's it. Okay. Very good. The next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 update for the town of Yarmouth. I see we have our health agent, our health director here. And let's get Bruce Murphy up. Mr. Murphy, the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening, Board of Selectmen. My name Bruce Murphy, Director of Health. Also have Hillard Bosky, Chairman, Board of Health on also. We can see from this graph that I start with each week where the three waves are, where we started in the beginning, April, May, first wave, then December, January, second wave, and then the third wave, which we're in now. We can see it leveling off. It's not going up, so I'm hopefully it's leveling off and not spiking back up. Okay. Yeah, the county one that they produce each week, this came out yesterday. You can see it's kind of following the counties, which is great. And the county shows the third wave decreasing more. So across the county, it might be decreasing, but I think in the mid-Cape, it's kind of leveling off. Also, the county has seen from the beginning, we see here, they've had roughly 13,000 confirmed cases of COVID with 457 deaths. Okay. Where we sit right now is we've had 1,522 from the beginning of March 19th, and we are currently following 77 active cases with 34 deaths. Thank you. Our breakdown by age. We kind of tried to see by age, and then I wanted to do it by the third wave. So if you go down a little bit more, Kyle will get the totals. You can see the age, is that 30 to 39 age group probably has the highest amount than the 2029. But we've also seen an increase in the school age 11 through 19 of 59. Again, still feel the school is doing well. We have no large clusters there, which I would consider if we had 1 or 2 or 3 kids in the same classroom. So that is doing fine at the school at this point in time. But since the third wave has started, you can see that we've had a total of 369 cases. Okay. Interesting enough, from when the COVID first started, our first case of March 11th, 28-year-old male, 500th case, December 18th, 96-year-old female, still doing fine. Then our 1000th case was February 5th, female 30, and then we just had our 1500 case, April 16th, the female age 40. So just an interesting point of fact. Thank you. Where we sit, this comes out on Thursday nights, Friday released by the Department of Public Health. This came out last week. This is the 5th week that we've been a red high-risk community. Positivity rate basically stayed the same, no change. What the good news is Barnstable was lowered. So hopefully in the Mid-Cape, we're seeing that flatten off. However, we did see Dennis positivity rate go up to 9.5, which is a slight less than they had last week. Sandwich, who had been high, had just moved down to the yellow. I believe we'll probably be in the red for probably a couple more weeks, even though our cases are going down. We can see the county positivity rate is at 5.14, which is almost double of what the state is at 2.48. Okay, thank you. Hospitalization rates are going down. That's what we like to see. As we can see right now, we only have 7 beds at Cape Cod Hospital and 2 in ICU. The 2 in ICU seems to be about what we've seen over the past few weeks. And we can see going back up to the top, March 29th is when it was the highest impact on Cape Cod Hospital, when there was 30 people in the beds. So that looks like it's flattening off at the hospital. The total deaths have gone up to 31 to 34. So we did have 1 in March and 2 in April. Average age ranges from 63 to 69 with average age of 83. And like I said, I believe the good news with the deaths decreasing or not increasing at all is because everybody in the nursing homes have been vaccinated, probably for about 3 months now. So I think that's showing some positive results as we work with the nursing homes. Okay. COVID precautions. I know I say this each week and I say it in the newspaper and I sound like a broken record, but I still have to say it because when we talk to our contact tracing of these 77 positive cases that we're following, we say, what's the common denominator? And a lot of them are gathering, and whether that gathering's over somebody else's house, they've had a small dinner party that not everybody was vaccinated, still having birthday parties with little kids and the parents come over, still having sleepovers, still just not taking all the precautions they need to do. And we're seeing this every day when we talk to our contact tracers. So we tell people, we know it's COVID fatigue out there. We know the weather's getting better, but you still need to take the precautions. Thank you. Precautions townwide, the Board of Health looked at what, met with Amy Hall at Recreation of what we're going to do for large gatherings within town. The Board of Health put that on review, a pause, and we'll look at it again May 1st. Even though 150 people could gather outside, that's still in some small areas a concern, especially at the Graves Beach Cabana or Flax Pond, and just trying to stay with the large gatherings for now. We have approved several small gatherings, I would say, between the 20 and 30 size groupings for several weddings, several family gatherings and so forth, either at Grays Beach or a couple other beaches in town. So we have been working with Rec on smaller wedding and events. It's just when we hit these larger groups, we want to get a better feel for it. Under complaints, we did get one over the weekend about Grays Beach. Cabana was being used by quite a bit. They hung a banner on it that said happy birthday. People were there. People were overcrowding on the boardwalk. So we had a lot of issues there last year from the spring on. That should hopefully reside this summer with a guard there. But in the meantime, as the fire department gets signed messaging boards, we'll be able to add a message to mask required there, along with, I think they're going to put some parking on the message also. So we're working with the fire department on that messaging only. But we also see some gatherings at the basketball courts at Homer's Park and 6A, the playgrounds, and the soccer fields on Sunday. They're used by a couple pickup teams that play there, and then they kind of move around, and then they have a social gathering afterwards. So I know I've talked to both of them, and Amy Howell's talked to them about permitting also. So something that we're keeping a close eye on. Okay. Now the second half, we get into vaccine for what we're doing with the spike right here. We know the third wave is hopefully leveling off. So what are we going to do for vaccine? Okay. We know we need to break that third wave. This was in the paper on Sunday. Breaking the third wave just from lax behavior was driving the surge, people not taking the precautions, and still the need to get the vaccine down here to get out in front of the third wave. Okay, yeah. So just mentioning, Senator Sear has been pushing that everybody be patient. The vaccine is coming. We're getting more of it. Still take precautions, which I was also stating also within our precautions. Okay. We now know we're in phase 3 for vaccine now. People over 16 are now eligible. More people are applying to get on to the sites, mega sites. A little bit more vaccine is coming into the state, so that's the good news. We are seeing some more vaccine come into the county, which is even better news. Last week, we got about 3,500 doses. This week, from talking to Sean O'Brien today, they're expecting about 4,600 doses, so they're up 1,000. And they're going to get 2,000 doses from the federal government coming in through Community Health Services of Hyannis that the county's partnering with. So that's about 7,000 doses approximately the county's getting this week, on top of 5,000 from Cape Cod Hospital. So we're seeing about 13,000 doses this week. So that's great news that we're going in that direction. Hopefully that continues. We know that Johnson & Johnson is on pause, so that's in refrigeration in the county. So that's good news, and hopefully that will continue. Okay. My last couple slides here. Barnstable County, we just see how that looks for individuals, at least with one dose. And if we can kind of go over, I'm going to leave these next two slides up a little bit, is the persons that have at least one dose over age 75 within the county's 94%, 27,000 have at least got one dose. So that's the good news. Still need to do, 1,700 people, 75 and older. Then we drop down to the 65 and older. 85% has at least one dose, almost 33,000. And we still need to reach out to 6,000. So hopefully with this new dosage, of course, we're going to have more competition from requesting vaccine, which is fine from the younger ages. But overall, 55% of the county population at least has one dose. So I think that's the good news. How does that break down to Yarmouth? We break it out just a little bit more on the next slide here, Kyle. And I probably should have circled a little bit. But if we drop down to the bottom where it says age 75 of our population and that group of 3,600, individuals with one dose has been 3,300 people. So we've done 91% of our age 75. We still need to do about 350 people. If we look at the age 65 to 74, we've done 81%, and we still need to do about 3,200 there. About 700 there, 800 there. And then the 50 group that just came in, that one dose we've done 3,200. So overall, between 50 and above, we've done quite a bit. We only need to do about 3,000 more. So that's good news on the vaccine front that we've seen over the last few weeks. And then I'm going to end up with our last two slides right here. If we can go into the homebound that was put on pause last week when they pulled Johnson & Johnson. As the fire department was picking it up, we're ready to go back again this week with it and going to use the Moderna, working with Outer Cape Healthcare. Lieutenant Chris McMahon from the fire department will be coordinating the fire department paramedics, EMSs that will be going out in a group of teams. We'll be doing 107 homebound people starting on Thursday, Friday, and what we need we'll finish up next week. Diane Kane at the senior center has been making the calls, and we'll be making the calls tomorrow, telling the people when they'll be online to get their vaccine. And she's been in touch with them several times over the last week on vaccine, because I know it's been very anxious and frustrating for the homebound people. And then I'll just leave with the Council on Aging last slide, that if people are still in need or homebound, still give us a call, because we can still work them in. They might be shut-ins. Things have changed. We know homebound changes, shut-ins have changed. So we can still work them in over the next week. That brings me through the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
You're muted, Mark.
Muted, Mark.
I'm gonna go to Dan Horgan. Comments?
Thanks, Mark. I've been very pleased to see that the numbers have come down. They seem to be stabilizing, which is great. I guess my worry is what's going to happen at the end of this week. This is school vacation week, as you mentioned, and hopefully people are taking your advice to heart and are not having kids gather in large groups. Bruce or Dr. Bosky, one of the things that's happened this week is I've talked to an awful lot of people who have kids, and there still seems to be quite a bit of concern out there as to whether or not to inoculate kids. Is there any kind of education being offered for parents in our town that helps to answer some of the questions that are going around with our parents in terms of, some of the things I've heard of concerns about unknown effects down the line, need, how really pressing is the need for children. Is there any effort to help educate some of these parents as to why it's important to vaccinate kids from 1 to 19, 1 to 18?
Dr. Bosky, would you like to? respond to that?
Well, Bruce, I'm not sure what this school is doing. We certainly haven't been. We're certainly not going to take the role of being the medical advisors here. Certainly, any student that's attending a school certainly needs contact with a pediatrician. I mean, that's the first place I would go, is to their own physician, I think, or nurse practitioner. Would be, I think, our best bet is to think of it that way.
As a follow-up, are there any numbers to help us to determine how many parents are actually vaccinating their kids? Or they're obviously the last group that's coming online as far as being eligible, but are other places experiencing a concern or reluctance to inoculate kids?
We don't know how many parents have been vaccinated. We just get just a general number of people. We don't know who in the community is vaccinated. So that will be a challenge, because some people feel they don't need to wear a mask after they've had their full vaccination series, but they still need to take the precautions. The school, I know they'll be probably talking to the children about vaccination. They do mention it when they sent a letter home prior to school vacation, that, you know, people, when they come back from vacation, they need to strongly recommend quarantining before going back to school if they haven't had the vaccination. So the school has been mentioning that.
Okay, it's just a layman's suggestion that we may want to do something as far as providing some education for parents, because I think there appears to be some real concern and confusion and reluctance from some of the people that I'm hearing. And it concerns me, frankly, going forward as to the effects on the schools. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
You're perfectly right. I mean, there's been more concern now that the J&J vaccine was put on pause as well. People are more concerned, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to ask Eric Tolley. Do you have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mike Stone, comments, questions?
A couple of things. Is there any explanation by any professional group or individuals as to why the infection rate on Cape Cod is so high with respect to the average in the state?
Bruce, can you answer that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say what they're seeing is the variants seem to be stronger down here on the Cape, and the state has acknowledged that, and I think both the UK and the P1 variants were stronger down here, and that's what we're seeing on the spread.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, I think I read in one of the articles recently that some very young infant got infected with COVID. An infant that was a matter of months old. How serious is the COVID virus in very, very young children like that? You don't hear very much about that.
No, that was one that came in over the weekend. It was a 4-week-old baby, came home, and the father became positive and transferred that to the baby. So obviously they didn't know that when they're bringing the baby home. So that's a concern. We know the baby had a high temperature. We haven't had a chance to follow back up on that, but we'll be staying in touch with that family.
It must be, you don't hear of it much. It must be relatively rare in very young children, isn't it?
I would say rare, but we've probably had half a dozen cases in children under 1.
Really?
Yeah.
That's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I don't have any questions. I just want to thank representatives tonight for being here and to update us. This was very informative, and we appreciate your ongoing efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a new liquor license hearing, Saga Yarmouth, Inc., doing business as Saga Sushi, 521 Route 28 West Yarmouth. And for this portion of the agenda, we'll turn this over to the licensing chair, Mr. Mike Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kyle, is there anyone here yet for this hearing? The ad was in the name of Attorney Ted Schilling.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Schilling is here.
Okay. Ted, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you. Can you hear me now? I'm here, Theodore A. Schilling, attorney at law from Austerville, and my client is here, the owner.
Okay, good. Ted, I'm going to read the ad into the record, and then you can proceed from there. Your client's first name is H-U-I. How do you pronounce that?
Huling.
Huling?
Huling
Chen?
Chen, yes.
Okay.
She goes by Angel, though. Makes it easier.
That is easier. Okay, here's the ad. A Board of Selectmen acting as the local licensing authority for the town of Yarmouth has received an application for a new annual all alcohol restaurant license from Saga Yarmouth Inc., doing business as Saga Sushi, 521 Route 28, West Yarmouth, Mass. 02673. Manager Huling Chen. The premise is a single-story building with kitchen, prep food area, walk-in cooler, waiter station, sushi bar, liquor bar, and 2 dining areas with on entrance and exit, consisting of a total of 1,962 square feet. Hearing will be held on Tuesday, April 20, 2001 via Zoom. Meeting begins at 6 p.m. Written comments will be accepted until 4:30 p.m. Friday, April 16th, 2021 in the Selectmen's office at Town Hall via the Dropbox, or can be submitted electronically to publiccomment@yarmouth.ma.us. Please see the posted agenda on the town website 48 hours prior to the meeting for further instructions on electronic participation. Okay, Ted.
Well, like I said, my name is Theodore A. Schilling. I'm an attorney at law from Austerville, Massachusetts, and I did the filing, and we represent Saga Yarmouth Inc., doing business as Saga Sushi. It's a fusion restaurant that's going into the old Christmas Tree Plaza at 521 Route 28. Actually, we started this back in March, believe it or not, and and it took us a long time to get to this point, but they're ready to get geared up. And it's an all alcoholic pouring license. It's a restaurant that they have a lot of experience. It's Huling. Angel has a lot of experience, about 15 years worth of experience. And they have all the tip certification, 2 of them at the spot, and safe serve. And they run a very good restaurant. I've been representing them for, I think about 12, 14 years. So they do a good job. And I think and the hours are normal hours that they do. They don't, 12 to 10, I think, on Sundays, and 11 to 11 on the other days. And sometimes it closes up at 10. They met with Sergeant Tom Hennessy, she did, and they went through all the rules and stuff. So that worked out pretty well. And I don't have much more to add to that, other than the fact that they follow the rules. They don't have any violations, and they run a good restaurant.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Before I go to the board, is there anybody that has submitted any kind of written input, either for or against this license application? I guess my question I'll address to the 2 Bobs and the Kyle.
I haven't seen any in the public comment email. I do see that we do have somebody in the audience looking to seek recognition on this.
Okay, why don't you give us that person?
All right, so it's Mr. Tom Nicanello is seeking recognition.
Tom.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Tom Nicanello here from the lovely village of Bass River, the beautiful town of Yarmouth, representing the Chamber of Commerce tonight, sir, in full support of the business now going into West Yarmouth. West Yarmouth is a beautiful village here in our community with a great strip. of Route 28 from the Hyannis line to the Parkers River. And these people are moving in with a restaurant in the middle of the pandemic. And we're going to give them our full support. And once they're there, a couple of seasons with the water park and the Dollar Tree and the ice cream store, and Luke's right there servicing all your spirits and foods needs, and Dunkin' Donuts. It's going to be a great fit. And we're just totally a support of another business in our community, and we wish them well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a great night.
All right, thank you, Tom. I'll go to the board to see if anyone has any comments or questions. I'll start with Dan Horgan.
Mr. Chairman, should we close the public hearing?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
I'll make a motion.
And I'll second.
You got a motion and a second on that?
Yep.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor, Dan Horgan?
He's saying aye. We just can't hear him for some reason.
Okay. Mark?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye as well. So public hearing is closed. Does anybody have any questions? Start with Dan.
Just one, if I might, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Schilling, you mentioned that you started in March, but there was a delay. Was that something caused by the town or by your process?
No, it's caused by COVID-19.
Okay, all right. No other comments. I just want to welcome you both to the town. We're very excited and pleased that you're joining us, and look forward to supporting you going forward. Thank you.
She's looking forward to working there.
Okay, Eric?
I don't have any questions. I wish the new owners much luck. And my one comment is, I think that in the packet, this checklist that we're seeing from the police department, I think
Right.
that's new. I don't recall having seen that before, but
I haven't seen it before either.
that's a great checklist.
Yeah, it looks to be, it's useful. I think there's a few other things that could go in there, but I think it is, I agree with your comments generally.
So,
I don't know who devised this. And it is the first time I've seen it in one of our licensing packets.
so just commend whoever put that together, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Mark?
I have no questions. I'm ready to move this, Mr. Chairman.
There was one question in here I had on the, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, on the financing part of this. Let me see if I can find it. Just give me a minute. Yeah, if you look, it says source of cash contribution, Ted,
Yes.
and it lists FY trading and East Coast fire and ventilation. And then it's a total of 89 plus. And then if you look down a little further, it under source of finance, it says Leaf Capital Funding 80, it looks like the same number. Can you explain that?
Well, that's the whole thing is through Leaf financing. They paid for the Leaf is what covered those purchases on those two companies. So that they went through Leaf to do the financing. They pay one financing payment for both of those. The two people that supplied the equipment and stuff. So Leaf is the one that lent the money, and they have a security interest in that. Not in the license, but in the equipment.
Okay. So FY Trading and East Coast both finance their capital contributions?
No, they were paid by Leaf.
They were paid by Leaf.
I think that might be the confusion. Leaf is the financing fleet that paid both of them. And that's the total is the same.
Okay, I see. I understand. Okay, does somebody have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval of the application as presented.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the license application as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, literally seeing none. I will move for the roll call vote with Dan Horgan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, so it's unanimously granted. Ted, did you have any certified mails on this?
Yes, they were all mailed. What I made, I misread. I've done a few of these licenses. I didn't realize that this, you wanted them sent to the town. So I talked to Van Anson.
Yeah, Vaughn, yeah.
Vaughn Anson. He was been great. And anyway, I mailed him all the I did 58 certified mailings, and I mailed him all the green cards. And today I had 3 come in and a return envelope. So I copied them and emailed those to him.
Okay, very good. Yeah, he's new. Linda retired very recently, and she's helping out and training him and so forth. So it's good to hear that you've had a good experience with him.
I did. He was very good. And Linda, I dealt with Linda before, and she is sorry to see that she got retired, but she did a good job too. Because we started in March with her.
Yeah, Linda's a big loss for us, and there's no question about it. I've never heard over the years anybody speak about her and their experience with her in other than superlative terms. So,
yeah, very helpful.
Vaughn's going to come along, and Bob Lawton assures me of that.
Mr. Chairman, we did receive the receipts. I checked with Vaughn today. So we have them, except for the 3 Mr. Schilling talked about. So we do have them.
All right, Ted, thank you very much.
Thank you, Warren.
Good luck to your clients.
Thank you. We appreciate. Thank you very much. Signing off.
All right, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our hearing.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Land Disposition Committee, and to present on that is Robert Lawton, Jr.
Mr. Chairman, it's simply a quick update. I asked the chairman of the committee if it was okay if I could just do this. In the packet was a memo from the Land Disposition Committee to the Board of Selectmen dated March 31, and the Disposition Committee has been meeting on a regular basis. I believe there have been 5 monthly meetings, and there were 3 parcels, small parcels, which are to be sold at for tax title properties. There's no requirement to go to town meeting, as under the general laws, as long as it is approved by the Land Disposition Committee and the Board of Selectmen, they would simply be sold. And we would think that the abutting property owners will be the bidders. They have all expressed an interest. So I'm sure you've read the memo. The request tonight is simply for the Board of Selectmen to approve the sale by tax title of these 3 parcels, one on Mill Pond Road, one on Oak Bluffs Road, and lots C10 and C11 on Route 6A. And I think they're in the packet were copies of the maps, etc.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the sale of these 3 parcels as submitted.
Okay, subject to the conditions and recommendations in the
Yes, sir.
outlined in the memo?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it. If I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Stone?
Thank you. Now, Bob, when these are sold, do they, if there's interest in more than one party, how does that work? Or can you just reach out to the abutter and just sell them without inviting any other interest?
Normally, the tax collector would advertise these with a notice to the abutters who have expressed an interest, and then it's sold to the high bidder.
Okay, thank you.
With the restriction, I think I'm glad the chairman talked about that. The highway division or DPW did ask for a couple of restrictions. It's simply a permanent easement for drainage purposes,
right,
which the committee did agree to and approve.
Very good. Ann, did you have any questions?
Just one quick one, Bob. How are those parcels or remnants, how are they valued?
They have according to the assessors, they have a low value because a lot of them, they're not buildable lots at all. So he puts the assessors put a minimum value on the properties. think, and I'm not sure in the packet, I thought they had included that, but I'm not sure. Yeah, like as an example on Mill Pond Road,
It's in
the
there,
value
Bob.
was like $3,300. Oh,
Right.
there we go. Kyle had that. So it's a minimum value based upon the assessor's review.
Okay, thank you,
So
Mr.
that's the
Chairman.
first parcel, and I'm hoping that Kyle, can you put the other two parcels up real quick? To show them to the board and to the public. Again, these are incredibly small.
I'll do a quick review if you want. This is the 0 Mill Pond Road one. So 0.03 acre one right there on the assessor's map. This is the aerial shot of it. The next one was the Oak Bluffs Road assessed at 9,700. Again, just a small little parcel, 0.07 acres. This is the aerial. And the last one, and this was the recommended easement that Mr. Lawton was referring to. And the last one is a little bit more complicated, as was stated in more detail in the memo. But this is the lot, and specifically, it's this part of the lot off of Route 6A.
Thank you, Kyle. Any more questions on the motion that's been seconded? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote. Dan Horgan.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It passes. Very good. Thank you for all that work, Bob, and to our.
It was really the committee and Jim Saban as the chair.
Yeah, thanks.
And also Kyle in putting all of this material together. He's been very good about putting a nice package together, so the committee each month had a lot to review. So thank you to him.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the drive-in site progress report with an update from Mr. Lawton.
So to give you a brief update on where we stand, and in the memo dated April 14, I outlined that we have a draft RFP and license completed. It has been reviewed internally. The next step is to send that to the Chamber of Commerce and to the drive-in committee for their review and comment. Also, Kyle is now going to be able to get involved in this as part of his duties. He'll be the town's representative, along with someone from the Chamber of Commerce. In talking with Mary Vilbon, she was, I don't know if I should say enthusiastic, but she wanted to be involved, and they're going to be designating someone to assist the town so that we will have, as we receive the proposals, before they come before the board, a review by town staff and by chamber employees to give you a recommendation. We're hopeful, again, hopeful is the operative word, that we'll be able to have the final RFP and license finished before the end of the month and have this out to 3 or 4 firms that have already expressed an interest in providing some type of entertainment to the town at this venue. The other thing I should say, we are working on the noise issue. We will be, I think, possibly next week, presenting a memo from staff to have special counsel extend his work to start to review the RFP and to get a better handle on this, the 10 decibel noise limit, which is set in certain instances by the state. We understand it, but we're uncomfortable on how that is to be applied. So we're moving, I think, in a positive direction. It is based upon the board's prior vote. It'll be a series of events. It will not be a whole summer. I don't think we can do that anyway. And we're putting in the RFP some restrictions on the number people can have. As an example, I don't think we'd like to have a proposal where somebody says, I'd like every weekend from Memorial Day through Labor Day. I mean, that's not what I think what you were looking for. It's a series of special events spread out over the summer, so it doesn't have the dramatic impact that occurred last year. So simply an update, no vote necessary tonight, but just wanted to keep the Board of Selectmen in the loop on what progress was being made on the reuse of the drive.
That's terrific, Bob. Let me do this while we have you and while it's fresh in our minds. I'm just go around to the board, see if there are any questions or comments. Eric, do you have any comments or questions on the update?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, how about you, Dan Horgan? Any comments, questions on the
Thank you, Mr.
update?
Chairman, no.
You're good? Okay. And Mr. Stone, Mike, do you have any comments or questions on the update?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So thank you, Bob. Thanks for the update,
you.
and everything's going in the right direction. Appreciate it.
We think so.
Good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our first review of the 2021 annual town meeting warrant, and we're going to bring on Mr. Rittenhour. We heard you had your second shot today, so we hope you're feeling better.
Yes,
And-
shot number 2. I'm getting a little inflamed, I guess, but hanging in there, doing well. And we do have the draft warrant. Everyone's got a copy of that in their packet.
I do think what would be helpful is for the public to follow along if we could get on the screen. If maybe Kyle could share the screen with you, Bob, and we could get something up. There we go. Great.
Oh, that's great. And I just want to say, in the short time that I've been here, it's been very impressive to see everyone come together on the formation of the annual town meeting warrant. Obviously, I can't take credit for the draft, but I just love the way folks are working together on it, and it's been a tremendous team effort. And Mr. Lawton, I think, was really running the show on that. So thanks very much, Bob. I'll walk through the individual articles. It is still a draft, so there are some questions. We've also got a number of team members here that hopefully will be able to answer any questions that folks have. And maybe Kyle, you could sort of walk through with me. It starts off, we're still waiting for the Finance Committee report. And then obviously we've got the traditional parliamentary procedures, which that's a great part of the warrant. They're in there, as well as some of the common terms that are used. And after the introductory material, we get right into the articles. And Article 1 are the current year bills. We've got a couple of accounts that are over the construction and demolition, 150,000, and that's due to enormous volume at that facility, which I point out is taking in money as fast or even faster than we're spending it here. So that'll show up in the general fund. And we also have a $50,000 deficit in the snow and ice account. And we're seeking to use free cash to make up that deficit now. It can be put on the tax recap sheet as a deficit next year, but we'd like to avoid that if possible. And then Article 2, we move right into the omnibus budget. And that contains all the line items. It's still a slight work in progress to get the complete list for the motion of all of the funding sources, but Ed Centio's been working hard on that. And so you see the grand total there, 41,518,140 on page 13. So Kyle, maybe jump up to, and that's got the complete budget in detail, which I'm sure board members have seen, and that's the final. Then we move into Article 3, that starts the enterprise funds. And the first of those is the Gulf Enterprise Fund in Article 3. And in Article 4 it's actually a special revenue fund, not a true enterprise fund, but that's the water department. Moving in Article 4, and on the next page, Article 5 is the enterprise budget for the septage facility. And that's laid out in detail in Article 5. Article 6 is the DY Regional School District budget for the ensuing fiscal year. And that's the town's share of the regional school assessment. Article 6. Article 7 is the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School budget for next year with their assessment, town's portion of it. Then we move into the capital articles. It starts with Article 8 is the capital budget for the fire department, coming in at $989. The Article 9 is the water department capital, listed out at $955. And Article 10 is the town's general capital budget. Now, I want to point out that the capital committee is still finalizing its recommendations. So these are a draft right now. By the time you review this again, we should have the final recommendations for the capital committee, and it will be in balance with the funds that are available. And that's Article 10. There's the list in there. I do point out there was a late filed item that the board discussed, being the body cameras for the police department, which have been incorporated in there. So in case you had a question on that, it's included in the draft. We hope to have it included in the final as well. Then we go into Article 11 is the capital project for the police building HVAC system, and that's $3 million for the design, engineering, permitting, and construction for a new HVAC system for the police department. Article 12 is a set aside for salary and wage adjustments as a result of collective bargaining settlements that are ongoing. And I hope to have that number right in there. That's Article 12. Then we go to the next page. We have that Chapter 338 of the Acts of 2006, which is the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund. And that's an issue we'll be talking about, I think, a great deal more moving forward. We may need some work on that article, given the new receipts under that section that come in as a result of short-term rentals. So just keep in mind, we'll talk about that some more. Then we move into the community preservation articles. And Article 14 is with respect to the Yankee Village Motel. And we do have a legal opinion that this action may be taken by vote of the Board of Selectmen. So we're trying to put a fine point on it, but in the next draft, you may see a request to withdraw Article 14, but to be able to accomplish the purpose exactly as set forth, which is to substitute the grant funding for a portion, maybe $375,000 of the CPA funds, and some funds would need to be returned to the CPA. And again, our preliminary legal opinion is that that can be accomplished by vote of the Board of Selectmen. So that's Article 14 on Yankee Village. Be continuing to work on that. And then we move into the community preservation proper, which the first article happens every year. And this establishes the reserves for community preservation. And it's a very simple process that those three items outlined, the community housing, historic preservation, and open space reserve, are all required at 10% of the collections for community preservation, and the operating expenses are fixed at 5%. So the Article 15 establishes those reserves as required by law. And then you get into Article 16 are the CPA projects themselves through the next several articles. It starts with Article 16, the affordable housing projects for community preservation. And those are listed as A, B, C, and D, along with the some very nice explanation in there on the detail. Then Article 17 is the Community Preservation Historic Resource Projects. And they're listed A through F on page 23. You can see the amounts and where those are going, again, with the very good explanation that is accompanying it. After that, we move into Article 18, which is a community preservation open space acquisition. And this is the property along Higgins Kroll Road. It's a portion of the initial property that the town had sought to purchase. There are some details that they're still working out, and the sum is not final, but that is a portion of the total property that was out there under consideration. So that's CPA Article 18. And then in 19, we move into the recreation project for CPA, which is 1.5 million for the Riverwalk and Boardwalk Loop at the former drive-in site. So that's a pretty exciting project for the restoration of that property. That's in Article 19. And Article 20 is additional community preservation open space projects from the Open Space Reserve. And that's some of the Upper Bass River watershed and also a culvert in place replacement. So that's Article 20. And Article 21 is a placeholder for a revote of a previously approved grant requirement compliance article that we're looking at the wording on that right now to see if that's necessary. And Article 22 is the Eversource easement to provide service to the new DPW facility. And the address there is 74 Townbrook Road. And so that's Article 22. And Article 23, it looks like it's proposed for elimination. So I don't think we need to go over that. And the first real significant question that we have on the warrant is with respect to the DHY community partnership. Obviously, the article has been anticipated, and it is on the draft that would approve an agreement among the towns of Dennis, Harwich, and Yarmouth to establish that wastewater district. However, it appears that Yarmouth is the only town that's prepared at this point to vote it, and we do have a committee recommendation that this article be delayed until the fall. So where it is probably the most important article besides the budget, that we have on the town meeting warrant, we wanted to bring this in front of the Board of Selectmen and get the sense of the board, whether you felt comfortable in postponing this till fall or wanted to see it on this year's annual town meeting.
Bob, are you saying this is already the recommendation of the Water Resources Advisory Committee?
The Water Resources Advisory Committee has recommended that this article be delayed until fall.
Okay.
And that is a written recommendation I think board members have.
Okay. Do we need to act on this tonight?
No, you don't need to act on it tonight, but it's going to have to be acted on prior to executing the warrant. So I think we've got a couple more reviews, but it's coming up quick. So I wanted to call that to your attention, and I'll keep rolling, but that's one we'll get back to. And Article 25 is another one that was a placeholder, and it's like that's proposed to be eliminated too, so we don't need to review that in detail, which brings to Article 26 is the Gold Star article. It authorizes a real estate tax exemption to qualifying Gold Star parents or guardians. That would be of any soldiers or members of the military who were killed in active duty So that's the Gold Star article number 26. Then from that point, that finishes the town's business from our standpoint, and then leads directly into the petition articles. And I know we've got some presentations, but I'll go through them quickly so we can orient ourselves towards exactly what they are. Article 27 is a ban on the commercial sale of single-use plastic water bottles. And you can see the details in there. Begins December 31, 2021. Article 28 is a feasibility study to discuss repurposing the Lynx golf course to a solar farm. So you would have no more golf course, solar farm. That's Article 28 by petition. And Article 29 is a resolution endorsing the Solarize Yarmouth Plus program. So that's by petition also on Article 29. And Article 30 is the procurement of motor vehicles, which requires zero energy vehicles to be purchased in the town, and details of the bylaw are right there. And then Article 31 is energy efficiency in design services for requiring any town construction projects to be analyzed for the zero code to comply with zero energy use. And that represents the entire draft town meeting warrant. And as you can see, there are a couple of, we're still awaiting some committee reports, capital finance, and a couple of other details, but we hope by next week to have more of a just complete draft for you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I'm gonna go around to the board to see if any members have any questions about any of the articles right now. Obviously, we're gonna spend more time with them later, but just hit up any quick points that we need to clarify. Dan, do you have any quick comments on this first run on the warrant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize, it's because I'm on the computer, I have both the warrant on the computer and my notes on the computer, so it's difficult. I can't put them side by side. But let me see if I can get through this somewhat coherently. Let's see. I guess one of my requests or questions would be on the tech school budget. You've got the debt incurred for the new school and the budget that's proposed for next year together, lumped together. Is there any way that we could break that out so that we could at least see the increase in the budget, that the people in town meeting can see the budget? I think it's always helpful to be able to compare that to DY and allow people to see exactly what kind of percentage the tech school is staying within. And the way it's presented currently, I don't think that is readable or decipherable. So that's my first question.
Be able to do that.
Okay. I had asked the last time that the CPA was in front of us, if they couldn't also provide totals for all of the projects that have been done over the course of the lifetime. My concern being that some of the projects that we see come up time and time again have been granted awards, and I myself think it would be helpful if the voters of town meeting could actually see, how much of CPA funding has gone to Project X and Project Z. The way that it's currently presented, that doesn't allow for that appreciation. I suggest that might be something that could be included in the documentation for the warrant. It's a suggestion. I'm open to comment on that. Let's see, what else? Am I wrong? There seems to be a CPA article talking about buying the Higgins Kroll properties but it's also listed under the water department budget. Are those separate projects? In one of the water department capital budgets, I saw 300,000, and I wasn't sure if that was for purchase of the same land that the CPA is talking about.
Can you answer that, Bob? Either Bob?
Yeah, I see the land acquisition. I would have to look into that.
Okay, I was just confused why it would be in two different articles.
I think on the capital request, it's not specific, and we could find out what the 300,000 is for. I know that I was involved in the Higgins Crow Road issue. Now, I think it's public information that the property is under agreement. The Catholic Church owned the property. They have it under agreement. The wording is being adjusted because we would like to, when we find out who the supposed owner is to make a suggestion that we might wish to have some of the lots off of Higgins Grove near the well fields. We would like to purchase those, but I don't believe the 300,000. That was not the figure, at least on the subcommittee I was dealing with, based upon the appraisals that we had received.
Bob, if I could just interrupt for a moment. Yeah, Ed Centio has
okay.
his hand up. I think he might be able to provide an answer. Ed?
Okay, thanks.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
The water department is going to be providing some funds for the purchase of the property, as will CPA.
Okay, so it's an amalgamation of two different funding sources.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, that would be if we go forward, I think.
Right. On the DHY agreement, I guess I was not aware that the water resources had given us a memorandum to postpone, and that's fine. I think that was expected. I guess what I'm looking for is some input from town and Jeff Colby and the consultant. Is there any downside for Yarmouth going forward with recommending the agreements at town meeting? I understand that Dennis and Harwich are not there yet. I just want to know, is there any downside to our doing it? Is there any upside to our doing it?
Dan, before we answer that question, let me just ask the two Bobs. I do believe we're going to get briefed by them shortly, isn't it, at the next meeting on DHY to get an update? And so we can sort of deliberate openly as a board on this particular question. I think that's coming up. It's either the next meeting.
That was going to be a question to the board when you look at the upcoming agenda items, because we had different input from the board as to whether or not you wanted both Jeff in on DHY, and did you want to talk about the golf course? I think the golf course issue is more problematic because we really don't have any dates, we don't have any amounts, and I don't believe the engineers have finished. So I think Jeff could come in and that could be a discussion, because next week, hopefully we get some recommendations so we can start putting the warrant to bed. But yes, I think, and Bob will be doing the work on the agenda, but I know that we had that on as a tentative item. So
yeah,
that's helpful.
Yeah, I would recommend that we hold off on this until we get others who are advising us sort of in the same room to participate in the discussion for the full board. That way Tracy could participate as well.
Okay.
All right, if that could be done, that would be great. Thanks, Dan.
I forget which Bob it was, but one of you just mentioned that the tourism funding may be affected, whether increased, I imagine increased by short-term rentals. I just have a question about that in terms of, I thought we were dedicating short-term rental income to wastewater. Doesn't have to be answered now, but I would like some explanation of what you're speaking to there.
I don't know which one wants to. Well, I'll take a crack if you want. The issue is the wording of the initial legislation in 2006 could be interpreted that the new short-term rental is included in the calculation. Bob Rittenauer did some research, and I'm taking his thunder, but he did some research on it. And in one of the bills, and I think it was short-term rental bill, it talks about it added the word short-term rental. There are some options on that. I've given a memo to Bob about some thoughts. We will have to talk to town council. Now, I suppose the good news is, at least I believe, that since those numbers haven't been certified as of yet, that those new numbers would not be part of the calculation at this town meeting. I think what Bob Rittenauer was trying to point out, this is an issue that we have to grapple with probably sooner than later, to make sure it's crystal clear where the money is going and how it's going to be appropriated. And I think Ed Centio had his hand up, Mr. Chairman, to maybe have other comments.
Ed, would you like to speak to this? I don't see your hand up, but I'm going to ask you to chime in if you'd like.
No, Bob, the Bobs know this subject very well. I don't have a comment.
Okay, thank you.
I'm interested in more information on that because obviously we had intentions with short-term rental. Let's see. Has anybody estimated the cost of the Gold Star tax exemption?
I haven't seen the estimate. We could certainly ask the assessing office.
Okay, I think it would be helpful if we knew what we were voting on and its impact. And I'm curious where that came from, this particular article.
It says it was submitted by the assessors.
Would they normally do that in the normal course, or was that?
Yeah, and most often any of the articles that deal with the tax exemptions would come from the Board of Assessors. So
Okay.
that's pretty standard.
And I do see Ed Centio having his hand raised. Ed, did you have a comment on this particular question?
Yeah, this was just something for the Board of Selectmen to consider if you wanted to go forward with this. We have brought forward things like raising the exemption for the elderly and other items that are Board of Assessing items. There isn't someone that currently that we know of qualifies for this. So this is something that we're looking at prospectively to see if the town might want to offer something like this to our servicemen and women who may have passed away in their fight for our country.
Thank you, Ed. The 1.5 million on the boardwalk project, do we have a total cost on that project? Is this just a percentage of that? Under the CPA recreation?
Ed, did you have your hand up, Ed? Did you want to answer that? Or is it just up for
Oh,
specific reasons?
it was up from before. I didn't lower it. I think though that is just an estimate. I'm sorry, this is not the full price of the project.
Ed, do you have a ballpark on what the total price is?
I don't. We can get that for you.
Okay.
I don't, Mr. Chairman, I don't know. Kathy Williams had said she might be listening in, and she would have, I think, those estimates. And if she's not on, ask and you shall receive. I see Kathy is there. If you would allow her, she could give a brief update on that.
Kathy, can you speak?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I was just curious, Kathy, as to what percentage 1.5 million is of the final costs on the boardwalk project at the drive-in site.
It's the whole project estimated at about $6 million.
Okay.
Dan, you got to unmute yourself. Somehow you muted yourself.
I have a grandfather clock that's quite loud. I try to cut that off, but I apologize. Kathy, is this the first ask in that project?
No, it's the second ask for CPA funding for the project. We had originally asked for 3.7 million, and the CPA had discussed with the DISUC about wanting to fund other projects at the same time. So they originally funded in 2019 $2.2 million. So this is the
Okay.
second half of that request at 1.5 million.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You all
And
set, Dan? You're on a real run here, Dan. Can you,
I apologize. I thought this was the opportunity.
no,
to
no,
ask-
this is, I'm happy to do another round of questions or comments.
No, actually, the other ones can wait. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'll come back to you. Mike Stone.
No, I'm good.
been waiting.
Dan asked all the questions. I'm good.
That's great. Eric, did Dan ask all your questions too?
And then some, yes, thank you.
He thought he was going to get away with Tracy being away this weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. All right, well, you can certainly ask my questions now, Dan.
No, I think once I get those answers, I'll be ready for the next meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's great. No, I appreciate that. No, this was, I think, a very helpful dry run. One of the things that would be certainly helpful, I think, for the board to have is particularly with the petitioned articles, when we get to the point where we have to make a recommendation on them, certainly having recommendations from town staff, town departments, something from the administrator's office to at least help us assess how they might affect it financially, at a minimum, our own operations here. I know some of these articles are proposed, they're very well intentioned, but oftentimes when they come in, sometimes they come in sort of at the end of the process and we don't really have a full chance to vet them internally in terms of what their impacts might be. We're usually sort of scrambling to try to get some information. And we've seen the discussion play out on town meeting floor, which sometimes isn't particularly helpful. So I'm just sort of flagging this for the two Bobs to make sure that when it comes to the point when we're acting on them, to the extent that there are recommendations from department heads and from our own administrator's office, that we have the benefit of your insights as well in terms of how these might work.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure board members know that I've taken all of the petitions and distributed those to departments for review. And we've got some feedback, which I forwarded along, but what I'd like to do is put it all in a comprehensive packet and get that out to board members. And I would just point out one of the things that I was struck by when I outreached the department heads. I had really assumed that they were a part of the process that, sort of brought these petitions to life. And what I found out is that in most respects, that was the first time that these department heads had seen what are some very strict bylaws that are proposed for town meeting. And I think you'll find, the feedback, there's a lot of fear, among the departments on some of the impacts on this that really haven't been vetted out. And I would agree with you. I do find the intentions of all of these bylaws to be, very good, but there's just not a lot of information and discussion with the departments about how it can be implemented. So I think that you'll see a lot of that type of feedback from departments.
Yeah, no, I think the board would benefit significantly from getting feedback, because like I said, typically these come in at the last minute, and sometimes even asking legitimate questions might be seen as a criticism of the article. It's only an attempt to get some better information about how these articles might work and affect the town, so that the voters at town meeting at least have some idea of what this might cost them, So thank you. Those are just my comments. Is there anything else, any other, before we move from the review of the warrant, is there anything else board members would like to ask or raise? Okay, that's good. Well, that was a great presentation, Bob. Thank you. And so we're down with review number 1. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the, I know we're a little bit ahead of schedule. And hopefully we have Barry Margolin and Mike Duffy here with us tonight. I don't know if we see Barry's dog and Mike Duffy's here. So we'll just move on to the next item and invite Barry and Mike to make a presentation on their article.
Thank you, Chairman Forrest. So
Welcome.
the Yarmouth Climate Action Network is a group of 170 Yarmouth residents who signed petitions to submit articles to the warrant last fall and, agreed to postpone them all because of the COVID crisis last fall. Subsequently edited them and refiled for the annual town meeting. So we have 3 articles on the warrant. 2 of them are bylaws. The third is a resolution that Mike will address in a bit, but since it seemed like the more substantial issues were likely to be around the bylaws, that we would address them first so there's time to respond to questions around them. Both of the bylaws are about town procurement, so matters entirely within the town's discretion. They both deal with ensuring that the town will assess its future choices about procurement of town building projects and vehicles on the basis of the total lifetime cost rather than the upfront sticker price. It's something which all of us need to do long-term. And the thought is that if the towns begin to do that, they'll model that for our citizens. On public building projects, this was actually inspired by our former town administrator, who I think was responding to the fact that, we approved a big public works complex a year or so ago, which I supported and most of us did. But without having paused to think about what the long-term costs of operating would be in terms of the energy costs, and suggested that there should be a policy going forward that when you start a town building project, you look at the long-term operating costs for particularly the energy expenses and design to the extent possible to minimize the long-term operating costs. So this article proposes that at the starting phase, when you first go out for design services, you ask the designer to describe what it would take to build a net zero building that over the long term would have no net greenhouse gas emissions, and break that down into components. What would each component cost to reduce emissions? In response to a suggestion Selectman Stone made, I think, when we brought this article before you in the fall, expressly says in section 3A that it's not a mandate that the town choose the zero emissions option. We're not trying to force the town to spend any amount of money to reduce emissions, but that we know upfront when we make the decision about a building project, how much we'll save over the long-term life of the building by reducing emissions in each category. My own guess will be in the near term, there'll be building projects in which it won't make sense to go to net zero immediately because it's too expensive, but we'll know the trade-offs that we're making. So it's really about careful financial planning for how to make the building as energy efficient as possible at a reasonable cost. Over the long term, I suspect we'll get to a point where every building is going to be net zero, either because we're required to by evolving policy, or because the cost of reducing emissions will continue to come down. But it means if you're going to site the building, figure out where to put it so that you can maximize the amount of solar power you can produce from it. Make the south-facing windows big and screened so you get passive solar heating in the winter and don't heat it in the summer. Make it as airtight as possible so that you're not spending money to heat the outside, and have an efficient ventilation system so that the building's healthy. There's a whole range of technologies that have come into the world of designing buildings that any smart owner will figure out when they're going in. Some owners build to lease or to sell. The town owns the buildings it's going to have for 50 years. So figuring out the lifetime cost of the building is just common sense. The other article is about purchasing vehicles and says that unless there's an obvious cost disadvantage, when the town adds or replaces a vehicle to its fleet, it should be an electric vehicle. If there's a vehicle that fits the need, there are categories of town vehicles for which there's probably not yet a good zero emissions alternative. Fire trucks they're working on, I don't think they've got it yet. They're probably not great dump trucks yet, but there are police cars that towns on the Cape are buying that work, and certainly most of the ordinary vehicles the town buys are available in electric versions. The upfront sticker price is usually somewhat higher. The lifetime cost of operations is enormously less. The cost of fueling an electric vehicle is dramatically lower than the cost of gasoline, even at current prices. The town has advantages in that compared to an ordinary consumer, because we are getting subsidized charging capacity, and to its credit, the town has added enormous amounts of renewable solar power. Over the long term, it should be able to power its own vehicles with its own solar generating capacity. All of that's entirely aside from, the reality that we are facing a climate crisis, and it's good for all of us to reduce emissions because it saves our planet and the Cape. But the proposition is that, I own an EV. I bought it 2 years ago. The only maintenance it's needed in that time has been rotating the tires, because that's what the warranty requires. There's nothing to fix or replace or maintain in an electric vehicle, so that the operating costs are radically lower. Some of the cost differences for a consumer is compensated by tax credits, which the town can't take advantage of. Chatham has figured out if they lease vehicles from a taxable entity, they get the economic benefit of the tax credit. So they've been using that strategy to reduce the upfront cost of the EVs. Again, it's partly about just saving money. It's partly about modeling what we need to do for our residents and citizens, and partly about just being, good for our common planet. So I'd be happy to hear what your questions are about these.
So you're done, Barry, with the presentation on the
Yes.
articles? Okay.
I'm trying to be brief and.
No, we very much appreciate it. I know we've had an opportunity to get brief before, and thank you again for coming before the board. Let me go around to the board members to see if they have any questions for you. I'm going to start with Mike Stone. Mike, do you have any questions for the presenters tonight?
On the vehicle bylaw, I've not read it, line by line. We're just kind of getting an overview tonight, but is that going to be intended to mandate the town to replace these vehicles with electric vehicles, or is it similarly going to be more of a encouraged policy, like you were talking about with the solar panels and things like that.
No, this actually does say when you're buying a new vehicle, either to replace a vehicle in the existing fleet or to add to the fleet, if there is an available battery electric vehicle that serves the purpose. So that's the first filter, is there's got to be a vehicle which is functionally useful for the purpose. And if it doesn't materially exceed the cost over the lifetime of the vehicle, then the town should buy the electric vehicle. So it is calling for the transition to an electric fleet as soon as it is feasible in terms of both functionality and cost. It doesn't say that if it turns out that the electric vehicle costs twice as, for example, if we find there's electric fire trucks available next year, but they're still ridiculously expensive, it doesn't require that we immediately be the first adopters. But once they're in the same price range in terms of lifetime operating cost, we're moving to electric vehicles.
And in the example you just gave with the electric fire truck, if the reliability wasn't firmly established at that point, then that would be justification for the town to opt out as well.
Oh, certainly. It's about, the first criterion is functionality, that there is a vehicle that serves the town's needs. And then the second exception is if it's materially more expensive.
I understand. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Eric Tolley, do you have any comments or questions?
My only comment is, the same comment I had when this was brought up to us the first time.
Pepper, no.
About the parallel designs that the town might have to pay for to consider this zero net energy option. And my feelings haven't changed. I think it's going to be a great expense to investigate such design alternatives. And at the end of the day, there still would be no mandate. So that was my concern. The first time this was brought up, it's still my concern, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Dan.
I appreciate that, but we did modify this to make it clear that the analysis should break down the components of energy efficiency improvements so that the intent is not that there's a choice between either absolute net zero emissions or a conventional building, but the town understand how much each element of more efficient design costs and how much it saves over the life of the building. And our expectation is that a more energy efficient design is going to save the town more over the life of the building than the marginal increase in figuring out that engineering up front. And over time, designers are all going to be in the business of figuring that out for their customers, because that is clearly the direction in which both state and national policy is going. That that there is the law the state just adopted is going to propose a net zero design option for building codes for private buildings. This only relates to the buildings that are the town's own projects. It feels like the low-hanging fruit in terms of attacking the issue of emissions from the built environment.
You characterize the exercise as a marginal. I don't. So I guess we're at an impasse. So it doesn't change my feelings. That's all I have.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Barry. I'm going to go to Dan Horgan now. Dan.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you first of all for the presentation and for the work behind it and for the foresight, actually. We have to start looking at these issues, and I appreciate the fact that you're really leading us down that road. I do have some questions, and we can talk about these either in private or further along as we look at this warrant again. One question I have is how many charging stations do we have in town currently? And, what's envisioned in terms of a town fleet? Are we going to have enough charging stations for a fleet and vice versa? I'd certainly hate to have a situation where, we have vehicles that can't be charged overnight. So I'm concerned about making sure that we have enough of the structure behind the idea to make this an idea that's pursuable. I have a question in terms of, and maybe this is more for the two Bobs, but what's the distinction between a bylaw and a policy? On its face, it seems like a bylaw is a little bit more restrictive, more a little more difficult to go around. I don't know if that's the intent of this or if a policy gets us there. The intent is a good one. I'm just not sure about the vehicle of a bylaw as being the appropriate one. I think one of my questions is that you were talking earlier about fixed criterion upon which, these decisions would be made. And I'd kind of like to see that ahead of time rather than after the fact. It would have been nice to look at, what criterion are we making these decisions on rather than approving the bylaw or policy and then developing criterion. That worries me a little bit that it's backwards because it's difficult to envision costs and impacts without having the steps in place. And I may be wrong. This is a first blush impression that I'm getting. And then finally, I'm curious, has any other town done this? Have any other towns enacted these types of policies or bylaws, and especially with buildings? Have they been able to quantify an additional cost that's represented in terms of finding out the two parallel courses that are available? Just again, looking for more information in terms of knowing whether that this is a policy that we can support at this time, or does it need more work? Do we need to do more research before we bring it forward? But overall, I'm extremely impressed with the thought behind the bylaw suggestions and the work and the impetus that you're really leading us toward of being much more aware of environmental impacts going forward on buildings and energy and vehicles. And I think the list goes on. And I'm extremely appreciative of that. And I look forward to the conversation continuing.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to ask Barry to comment briefly, and then we need to move on. Barry?
So there were several different pieces of that. On charging equipment, I think our Energy Committee Chair Joyce Flynn circulated this evening a memo outlining that the charging equipment that the town installs, unlike those of us who charge our own vehicles, is largely subsidized by the state. And so the capacity to increase our charging capacity at relatively no cost to the town is enormous. And while the town clearly doesn't have enough charging equipment to charge its whole fleet yet, it can step that up over time, since it doesn't replace a huge number of vehicles in any one year. As to bylaw versus policy, a bylaw is meant to be binding. So this is a policy choice by the voters of the town that we are ready to move forward to make the town more energy efficient long term. But it's not just about environmental benefits. It's about thinking long term about the budget. That historically, the town meeting looks at the cost this year of an expenditure, of a capital project, of a new car, of a new building, and we vote on that without any discussion of what it's going to cost to operate that vehicle or that building over the life of the project. And that's bluntly crazy. I mean, it's the way historically town budgeting gets done. This is calling on the town to change its strategy, as we all need to think about how to save money over the long term, over the life of the car, over the life of the building. In terms of other towns, there are a number of other towns in the state who have adopted the policy to shift to an all-electric fleet starting now. I think the Cape Cod Commission is about to call on all of the towns on the Cape to do that in its new climate action plan. And similarly, to make town building projects a model for designing on a net zero basis. So while this is not yet the most common approach in towns, it is, I think, what's coming given both regional and state policy. But I'd be delighted to talk more offline when you have more time and we can go into more depth.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you. Unless there are any other comments by board members, I'm going to end this discussion. Thank you to our presenters, Barry, Mike, appreciate you being here tonight and answering our questions. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll be talking again. Good evening. The next item on the agenda is the.
I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Duffy had his hand up.
Mike, do you have something to say real quick? You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to just go over the Solarize resolution.
Okay, well, we pretty much hit the, you're going to have to do it real quick because we've run out of time.
Okay, let me just start by just saying, you know, the Solarize Plus Yarmouth program is up and running. And we've selected two installers, one for solar energy, one for air source heat pumps. And we've scheduled a Meet the Installers virtual meeting for Earth Day this Thursday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. In addition to employees from these two installer companies, representatives from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center and your Solarize Plus Yarmouth team will be participating. There are 5 objectives in that particular resolution. And as a resolution, it's not mandating anyone to do anything, but it is perhaps unknowingly, the 7 volunteers on our Solarize team have been instrumental in satisfying 3 of the 4 additional objectives of this resolution by engaging in outreach and education to assist both residents and small businesses in making informed decisions on energy efficiency and renewable energy opportunities, by encouraging residents to sign up for the free energy audit offered by Cape Light Compact, and by encouraging businesses and condo associations to investigate energy efficiency and renewable energy opportunities. Only encouraging a transition to electric vehicles is not being explicitly addressed by the Solarize team. So I'm asking for your support of this resolution by voting yes at the annual town meeting. Yes, Y-E-S, that stands for Yarmouthites for Energy Sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night. And again, this board members are certainly capable and are make if you could, Mike and Barry, make sure that we have your contact information. Leave that with our town administrators so that if board members want to reach out to you individually, or if there's a need for our dialogue outside our meetings, we can help facilitate that. So thank you again. The next presentation is we have Madhavi Benefician, and I don't know if she's here just yet. And I don't see her among any of the attendees. Do we have the next presenter, Kyle? I don't see
her or Mr. Barron in the audience yet.
No, I don't at all. Then let's move on to, I don't even see Mr. Barron at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay, so the next two presenters are not here. What I'd like to do then is just move on to the next item after that, which is board and committee actions. And the first item is, do we have any committee appointment recommendations? Mr. Horgan?
We do not this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, upcoming agenda review. So I'm going to ask the Bobs to sort of walk us through what we anticipate doing at our next meeting on the 20th. Let's just go through that agenda real quick for the 27th.
Okay, I'll jump in here.
Okay.
We've got the COVID-19 update from the Board of Health, which we're hoping to finally see a little more yellow, less red. Then there's a Grays Beach update. And after that, we've discussed earlier, there's the DHY discussion. We've got the impact on the Bass River Golf Course. We should also cover the proposed article there as well.
Yep.
And we'll be talking about the final recommendations on the ATM warrant. And there are also two licensing issues coming up. There's the change of premises for the Old Yarmouth Inn and a change of name and premises for Red Faced Jacks.
Okay.
So that's what we've got on the 27th coming up.
Before we leave the 27th, I just want to just check in with board members to see if they have any comments, questions, concerns with respect to the agenda as it looks for the 27th. No?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know that it necessarily has to be the 27th, but I believe it is time sensitive. I wonder if it might not be possible to have town council and us review once again the issue of the Eversource spraying. I had questions. I understood that Brewster was considering litigation to stop Eversource from the spraying. I had questions as to whether or not it was prudent for us to at least investigate that option of joining Brewster or seeking a restraining order in an effort to just get some answer, some response from Eversource, because at this point, to me, it seems that we've gotten nothing over the course of the past few years. I understand the spraying is imminent, and I just wonder if we couldn't have a discussion, whether it's in executive session or in public, to discuss Yarmouth's options with regard to the spraying.
Okay, let me ask the other board members. Is there, Mike?
I'd certainly be interested in that. I don't know what the time frame is with Brewster and with the anticipated work. So I really don't know how urgent it is or is not. I would look to others for guidance on that issue, but I think it's something we should look into at least.
Okay.
As I said last meeting, these environmental interests are very important to, as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as the residents of the town are concerned.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Eric, do you have any thoughts, comments on finding a way to add in either into the next meeting, or if it's something that can wait to the following meeting, just sort of an update on the Eversource situation, and particularly what's happening in terms of litigation and whether or not Yarmouth has an interest or there's the possibility of participating in that?
Well, I think Yarmouth certainly has an interest. I question whether or not the timing of a potential lawsuit would impact anything this year. And I'm no attorney, but I can tell you how suing a utility is probably going to go. So, yeah, I'm open to the discussion. Again, I don't think it's urgent because I don't think anything we do is going to have any impact on their plans for this year.
Okay, well, we can certainly inquire on that as well, I think. So I appreciate that. That sounds good. So I guess the point to the two Bobs is, I think it's a good idea to add this to the agenda. The question is my understanding in terms of Brewster's litigation is that it'll be sometime, either this month or next. I don't know if they have an actual time frame, but I do think it would be helpful for the board to be briefed and to assess and understand, answer some of the questions that Dan's raised and Eric has raised, what kind of impact it might have, what it might cost, the timeliness of it. I do know that when Brewster did go to court, it did stop the spraying in their town. So, so I'm not suggesting for a minute that it will here. I'm just suggesting that we should be able to get an answer to that question relatively quickly of the likelihood of that. So I think the message for Bob and the administrator is to explore getting a briefing on that. And obviously the Brewster folks, I'm sure, would be very interested in talking to Yarmouth about what they're doing, what their plans are, and to the extent to which we can collaborate and work together. So I'll leave that to Bob to figure out whether it's next week or the following week. I think Selectman Horgan's concerns are duly noted, and we should find an appropriate time to get briefed on it. So, you got that?
Hey, yes.
Thank you. Anything else with respect to upcoming agenda for the 27th, or is that pretty much it for the 27th? Okay.
Chairman, my only other question is the appropriateness of a golf course presentation when things are in such flux. I don't know how they could possibly make a presentation with the situation as it currently stands.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, because I think the reason why it was important to put it on the agenda before the town meeting is that the questions were relevant to the whole topic of an agreement. That our voters at our town meeting, if the agreement was going to be put before them, that they deserved more answers before the meeting as to what the impacts might be. And I think that was the intent behind queuing this up before town meeting. But I think you make a very legitimate point, and that is that if it looks like that this article is going to be deferred until the fall, then the timeliness of this kind of information would be before the fall town meeting, if indeed it's even going to be advanced by the other two towns in the fall. And again, there's some doubt about that in my mind, based on at least the discussions that I've had. I'd hate to think that they'd delay it, but again, that could be, an option. So if the other towns are not going to pursue it, then having the discussion in the fall may not even make much sense. So I think that's a discussion that's deferred. I do think, however, I'm interested in their recommendations in terms of where we stand with this agreement, whether their recommendation is to postpone it. I don't think it's a long discussion, but I do think we need to start also thinking about what the plan B is as well. And to the extent that they can shed some light on that as well, so that we're not sort of jumping into that discussion at the last minute, but we need to be thinking about a plan B, I think, starting now. So I'd like to talk about DHY, if that's okay with the rest of the board. Maybe drop the golf course discussion and the impacts of the golf course, but to getting a recommendation on the article, any other thoughts they might have, and what would entail a plan B, because it may very well be that going into the fall town meeting, we have to think of both options and be prepared to go with one. So why don't we pursue that? Unless there's an objection. Okay, very good. Let's talk briefly about May 4th.
Yeah, we should. May 4th is a heavy hitter night. It's going to be very, very busy. It starts off with the liquor license hearing for the new firm that's going to be handling the accommodations over at Bayberry and Bass River Golf Course, the Shea Hospitality. So that's a hearing. And obviously we've got the COVID-19 update. But the main things on the 4th, we have the capital budget hearing on the 5-year capital plan and the finance committee budget hearing. So that'll be a chance to go through all of the financial items that are coming up.
Okay. Any comments from the board members on what's slated for the 4th? Okay. Any other upcoming agenda items that we need to put on our radar screen? Okay, is there anything else that, Bob, you would like to make us aware of before we move on to the next item?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I think the only comment that I had was that it's going to, we're running up against our publication times for the warrant.
Right.
The town report is 99.9 done, and that's going to the printer this week. But we are running up against time constraints for publishing the warrant. I was talking with the town clerk about that, and we need to get it in. Unfortunately, probably the first week in May, maybe the second week, but the first week, because our meeting is on the 22nd, and you have to have, if you're going to do it in the register, it needs to be in, well, it's either the 6th or the 13th. Now, you can do a lot of the recommendations from the floor, but we are running out of time because you're meeting the 4th and the 11th, because you're not meeting the 18th because that's the election night. So you really, after next week, you only have 2 meetings to finalize your positions on the 30-some articles.
Right.
Just a concern that Bob and I have about finalizing it.
And I think you ought to be looking at May 4 to be done with the town meeting warrant, and that way let the advertising process move forward. So I think you ought to
That would
really
be great.
Okay, well then that should be our goal. That will be our goal. Okay, very good. All right, anything else on the upcoming agenda? Hearing none, let's move on to the individual items. Are there any individual items board members would like to speak to? Eric, do you have an individual item or two?
I don't have anything.
Mike, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Dan, do you have an individual item or two or three?
The only one I have, Mr. Chairman, is a question as to, now that we're all getting vaccinated, is there any planning in terms of when we might again meet in person?
Selectman Tully had raised that question as well, and I think we had agreed that we should bring that up when we got some time to address it. I'm gonna let Bob Lawton speak to that.
I've talked with Bruce Murphy today about, because we've had another request to have a hearing, or not a hearing, but a meeting regarding the liquor updates to our licensees. And he is going to get back to me, but his initial response was he's concerned about having any types of in-person meetings, but he is going to get back to us. So we have started that process. And I know internally, there's been a recent memo going to the town administrator about some options that we may have for town hall. But I think right now we're waiting for Bruce to finalize some things with the Board of Health and what their recommendation is as far as the Board of Selectmen meeting and other boards, other regulatory boards.
Right.
So, yes, that's in process.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's move on. I understand Mr. Barron has arrived, so unless there's any more board and committee actions, I'm going to move from that agenda item and go back to the warrant question presentation from Mr. Barron on solar energy with respect to the one of our golf courses. So, Mr. Barron, the Links Golf Course, excuse me. Tom, are you here?
Yes, yes. Good evening with the Board of Selectmen. Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. I have a number of slides. If I could have an opportunity to show those.
Yes.
All right, I'm sharing.
How many slides do you have, Tom?
About 10. Real quick. This is the first slide. I had you can and before I start, I want to say that this is an idea, and it's an idea that has a lot of pieces to it, but it is an idea that I think is worth consideration. I had originally thought that you can see the acreage shown here. It was originally thinking that 100 acres was available. It isn't. That 400 kilowatts per acre was available for a solar farm. It isn't. It's about half that. And the price of 10 cents per kilowatt hour, that's very highly variable and depends on market value and all of that. But nevertheless, the potential bottom line is that there's a potential income of $3.6 million. Now, the capital budget that was presented, I think almost 3 years ago, showed about $150 million facing the town obligation, and that is a hell of a lot of money for a small town. You got $1 million of municipal debt obligation divided by 10,000 households, and that's $100 per household per year. When you look at how those projects would be stretched out over their life to pay them off over 20 years or even a 30-year cycle, you're looking at a roughly $800 tax bill per year initially. It declines certainly, but there's always another project to fill in the gap. So when you're looking at $800, the one thing that has been done with the wastewater project at the direction of the Board of Selectmen is that the first phase of wastewater be no tax burden for the community. And Rich Bienvenue had put together an excellent program, and over here on the right side, you'll see that there are 4 major elements that he had included in that overall program. And those are elements that you folks have been voting on, not only at this current cycle, but the previous cycle. The idea is that first phase of the sewer gets paid for this way, but and when that is done, that reduces the $800 tax bill to about $500. And all of these are the projects that are shown. The idea of having that's been put forth of a new library, the work at Matakees, whether it's Matakees or the new school, there are school expenses. There's the Cape Tech expenses that are all figured in on this. But $500 per tax bill is still a hell of a burden. The waterworks, the wastewater program does have some minor savings, and that's shown in the blue bars at the bottom. Well, the scheme that I think would be most helpful would be to get to the idea of the solar farm, and the solar farm would bring on its own capital expense. It would boost the capital burden a little bit, but the best part is that the income off the solar farm would well offset that, and the overall net example is about a $200 tax bill per year. So once the first phase of the sewer program is done, there's going to be additional capital expenses for the town. And this would give an opportunity to have an additional source of revenue that we don't have now. And I think that the old landfill, which is the links course, has been not the expectation that it was 20 years ago, but it has become somewhat of a liability. And I think that we should really look to change that. The golf enterprise, over the last 20 years since the links course has been in operation, Golf Enterprise, all the two main courses and the links have been underwater 40% of the time. So and they've been a financial burden on the town in all that time. Changing to a solar farm would reverse the burden to a plus surplus, and that's basically the concept that I have tried to put forth. As I said at the outset, this is an idea, and it's an idea that as a town we should really really consider. Now I'm going to skip back to wait just a moment. No, I'm going to move on. Hang on. Got to get my things in order here. The Ed Centeo had shown me that there had been some previous effort to look at the idea of a solar farm on the links course, and that shows in the yellow outline. The pink outline is what I'm saying, that there's still at least another 16 acres or another 40% of the area for a net of about 56 acres that could be available for the solar farm. And one of the main comparisons that you can see here is most households would gain $100 a month on their relief of their electric bill. The municipal buildings, both here in the town or any other municipal building in other communities, or even the Cape Cod Energy Park that is finally going to be implemented. These two elements, the municipal and the Cape Cod Energy, these are part and parcel of the wastewater financial plan for the first phase. The concept of the solar farm, however, is that the solar farm it has the potential of $250,000 a month much more positive toward solving future debt for the community. Now, again, as I said, it's an idea. There are a lot of pieces to this. We should take the time to study it. I've had comments that the golf interests don't want to get rid of the links course while the Bass River project is being redesigned, and that makes sense. But in the schedule for the wastewater, in regards to the Bass River, you're looking at a project that will not be complete over there until 2026. So we've got 5 years that the town can take to look at the potential for the solar farm, and to consider all of the issues that relate to it, such as previous legislation, which set up certain limitations on the town for that property and for the Peter Holman Park, and other recreation issues within the town that are controlled by it. Any new legislation, we would have time to prepare that. In other words, we've got 5 years, and there would be no burden on the golf interest during all that time, but a committee or a study group designated by you folks as the Board of Selectmen, I would suspect you'd include someone from golf, someone from energy, someone from finance or capital budget. And the idea is that we've got time to consider all of the aspects and come up with a plan. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Tom. Let me see if any board members have any questions or comments. Eric, do you have any comments, questions for Tom?
Thank you, Tom, for the presentation. I think it's an intriguing idea. My only comment would be something that Tom brought up is the timing of it. With the potential closing of Bass River for the wastewater project, I think that we're going to need those 9 holes, at least in the immediate future, to be able to accommodate the members and displace them as little as possible, although there will be some displacement, obviously. But again, I think it's a good idea and perhaps something that warrants further discussion. Unfortunately, I don't know that now is the time, but perhaps sometime in the future, once we get past this sewer project, I think the town could revisit it for sure. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Dan Morgan, do you have any comments, questions for Tom?
No, just agree with Eric in terms of, I think it's an interesting idea, and really what he's asking for at this point is a feasibility study. And it sounds like it gives us options and potentials for the future. So keeping in mind where we are with DHY, timing might be such that a feasibility study fits in nicely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Mike Stone, comments, questions for Tom?
I agree with Eric and Dan's comments, but on top of that, with COVID, it seems like, and you see it in the housing market with the tremendous increase in values of more and more people wanting to migrate from rural areas into, urban areas into more rural settings like this, which I think is going to put increasing, it already has, but I think it'll continue to put increasing pressure on the golf courses. So I'm a little skeptical from that point of view, as well as the redesign of Bass River and the potential use of that area as a recharge area. That's going to, put the golf course underwater for a while. But I have a question. When you talk about your savings figures, Tom, from residential households and municipal buildings and so forth, where do you get those numbers? Where do they come from? The savings. What are you basing those figures on?
Okay. I can't give you an exact quote, but I'll tell you this. I've investigated solar on my own property, and that's $100 a month. The information that the town already has in terms of the involvement with CVEC for the solar that's on the fire stations and also on the town hall and any other town facilities. The new DPW building has been, if not equipped with solar, it was, Jeff in the past has indicated that it's compatible for solar if that decision is made. So the $10,000 per month is probably a low figure, but it's a real figure, even though I don't have exact quotes. The energy park that has been projected in that $10,000 $10,000 a month. Actually, it's probably a little higher than that, somewhere between $12,000 to $15,000. And Ed Centio probably could fill in the exact numbers that have been projected, but it's in that same ballpark. But when you throw the idea of a solar farm and at the potential acreage that can be covered, 56 acres, there is the potential of getting $250,000 a month, and that's no small change. The town has no big industry that's giving major tax benefits. This is one way the town can help itself.
Very good.
I would, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I made the same presentation 2 weeks ago to Finance, and Mr. Lawson and Mr. Wittenauer were both present. And Mr. Wittenauer, you had, at the tail end, you had raised a question, raised a comment that this was a decision that was made 20 years ago, and you didn't think that it might be reasonable to overturn a town decision. Well, I would give you this as a rebuttal, if you don't mind. My question is—
It's not exactly what I said, and
I know.
I'll clarify my comments after, but I didn't say anything.
I know it's words to that effect. And I'm not trying to quote you exactly, but my rebuttal is basically this: when is it inappropriate to review a past decision of the town, especially where this has been a burden to the town and has been known to be underutilized. The other matter that's of interest to Ed Centio and the sewer program is the foreclosed properties, which are being hopefully going to generate some income. But that's only about a $4.3 million potential windfall, and it's a one-time windfall. The idea of the solar farm could be $2+ million each and every year for a number of years. So in rebuttal, that's the only thing that I would like to offer. And I wasn't trying to be rude by using your name, Mr. Widnower. It just that the question was a good question. It was a good statement, but I didn't think of an answer at the time. But that's why I offered it now.
Okay, thanks, Tom. We're running up against the clock here. Do any other board members have any questions or comments for Mr. Barron?
I do appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to present it. Thank you.
No, we're glad finally we've had a chance to talk about this, Tom. We know it's been on the radar screen for a while, and I've been looking forward to this discussion. And I too want to associate myself with Eric Tolley's comments and the other board members as well. So thank you, Tom. We're going to let you go, and we're going to move on to our final petitioner. I believe Madhavi is here, and we're going to see if we can get her beamed up, so to speak. Here she is, and she'll be the final presenter on this article. Welcome. You're going to have to unmute yourself, Madhavi.
Yes, thank you so much for seeing me yet again. I think we have an annual ritual of meeting now.
Seems like it. Yes.
This will be number 3. Well, I think you all are somewhat familiar. And one thing that unfortunately I have going for me is that news has basically followed our initial petitioning of this article in Yarmouth, as well as across the Cape, starting in 2018. And that specifically is related to the issues related to plastic itself. There are a couple questions that I hope that I can address early on before I start actually providing you just some basic rationale, just as a simple review and really for the public. And that is that this is a step forward. This is not a symbolic step. It is actually a realistic step. It's a step related to behavioral change. It's about looking back at what was, and at one time in our society, we weren't looking out for individual convenience. We were looking out to the idea of whatever we did having not a negative impact on the planet, but at the same time being able to solve our own needs or wants at a particular point in time. I think it's really important, and I'm hoping this is conveyed just in words. I am a professor, I teach economics, and the fundamental reality is that the types of products that we have on the market today that are single-use, convenience-based, are based purely on the idea that planned obsolescence helps grow our economy. That's what our economy is based on, is about production, consistent production. But we have a time, in this point in time in our society's life, that we can start to recognize that pointless production for both consumption for 5 minutes and then disposal is not leading to a sustainable future. One of the big examples, single examples, is single-use plastic bottles, period. We're using water because we understand there's an adjustment period. People need to have an adjustment for their behavior change. And we do have municipal water. For those of you that are aware, we've been putting on a community water forum across the Cape through Zoom. And this week we'll be talking about the Cape's single source aquifer. But last week we talked about the quality of municipal water and the regulation related to that. Jan Pelletier and Harwich was actually our guest speaker then. And so we've had these different educational outreach forums that are Cape-wide. But again, I'm hoping that we will have more discussion afterwards. I'm just going to share one little infographic that we had created for us. And this particular infographic now is international, which I'm somewhat happy to say because it's being used across the globe. But this is just a very simple way of just depicting as to why we are looking at this particular issue, but also why it's important to think of all consumption items from a life cycle perspective. Everything that we're sitting here on in terms of our chairs, our clothing, everything has a life cycle. Yet all that we have ever focused on is when we go to the store and we buy the item for consumption purposes. So this is part of our educational outreach, is to start to continue this awareness factor that life of the product is way before consumption and way after it. But the problem is that we're only paying for this component. So when we look at plastic, we have a couple of different entry points. Now, you know, there's a lot of this discussion about so-called bioplastics. Well, bioplastics, the problem is it's still not, it's dismissing the singular fact, which is it's a tremendous amount of resource input to create this still short lifespan over here. That's number one. Number two, we'll talk about in a second, it doesn't necessarily have a standard disposal life. If you look at a petroleum-based product, which is more than likely what's going to happen with the plastics industry, given that the fossil fuels, and even your earlier speaker was talking about substitution from fossil fuels using solar power, that industry needs an engine to grow. Plastic is one of the natural elements of that. Unfortunately, plastic is in so many other things, even the denim jacket that I'm wearing, because synthetic indigo is a petroleum-based product. But that being set aside, that consumption life is 5 to 10 minutes, then it goes into disposal. Plastic does not biodegrade and only photodegrades, which means, as we know, based on articles that just were released today, we're breathing it in, it's coming down in our precipitation, and it is basically becoming ubiquitous in terms of every aspect, not necessarily just ingestion through food. So that's happening through both the incineration elements as well as just wind and just the blowing away of plastics into the general environment. But nonetheless, it does not go away. And that's the important part to understand. Recycled plastic is not a solution because singularly right here from the production point, you can see that you have different production sources. You also can look in the water aisle of your grocery store and you can feel different plastic densities. To think that somehow you can have all these different containers end up being a container in and of itself is sort of not really thinking about the issue. What ends up happening with most of these single-use plastic bottles, should they actually get to the point of recycling, is they become downcycled. That means they enter into our clothing fibers, increasing the amount of plastic that enters into our water systems through washing, through our decking, through other types of alternative uses. Initially, it looks like it's a good solution, but those things are going to be having to be wasted. So more and more plastic is still going to be continually produced in the interim. Plus, when you create new plastic from old plastic, you need virgin plastic to create stronger chemical bonds. So all these elements right here, and landfills actually cost money. Incineration is going to cost money. There is no true commodity value for plastic. It is possible that temporarily there could be a heightened commodity value simply from the fact that companies like Coca-Cola want to advertise through greenwashing that they're using recyclable bottles to somehow continue to perpetuate the sales of their own existing bottles. But we have to sit back and be contemplative about these items. They don't make sense. And we are the stewards of the future yet to come. So I'm not going to continue anymore from this point. I'm hoping that 30 questions, you'll just share them with me because I know most of you have seen this information already on multiple channels and multiple venues. And I'm hoping that you'll join 7 Cape towns that have already taken the stand, 7 Cape select boards that have already voted in favor of this before their individual town meetings. And those towns are Brewster, Wellfleet, Eastham, Provincetown, Falmouth, Orleans, and Harwich. And I thank you so much for your time today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thanks for that presentation. I'm going to go around to the board members. I'm going to start with Mike Stone. Mike, do you have any questions for?
No questions.
Okay. Dan Horgan, do you have any?
I don't at this time, Madavi. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And Eric Tolley. Eric, do you have any questions?
No questions, just the comment, it's another noble cause, and I thank Madavi for the presentation. And I admire her passion and the eloquence in which she speaks. So, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Well, listen, Madhavi, thank you so much for coming before our board. It's good to see you. We're going to be working on our recommendations over the next couple of weeks, and we look forward to seeing you at town meeting.
Thank you very much. And I'm really hoping that next time we see each other, it's on a different issue. So I'm hoping for an affirmation from you all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you. Good night. Going back to the remaining items on our agenda, I'm going to go to the town administrator items, and we resume with the consent agenda. Are there any consent agenda items, Bob, that you need to discuss with us, or can we just go to a motion?
Well, there are 3. I'll list them out, see if there's any questions. The first one is to designate capital budget committee members as special municipal employees. We have a consent item to appoint Robert L. Rittenauer Jr. as the Yarmouth representative board member to the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. concurrent with the date of his appointment, and also a stop sign request at the intersection of Nottingham Drive and Bray Farm Road. Yarmouth Port.
Okay, so that's on the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move the consent agenda.
And Eric, is that a second?
It is.
Any discussion?
Just a
Hearing
quick
none.
question, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Whitnow, what's the rationale behind the first one?
The first one is requests have come in from members of the committee, and the process is designed to eliminate a potential conflict of interest under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Conflict of Interest Law. And a specific example is if you have an attorney who is on that committee, they're barred unless they're a special municipal employee from representing any clients before other boards and committees in the town. So in that instance, you would lose members that wouldn't normally, want to participate in just a small volunteer effort because it would preclude them from practicing their livelihood. And the special municipal employee status has been extended to, there's a list, Bob Lawton did a great memo on this in the packet, about 8 or 9 other boards and committees that for similar reasons have been designated to be special municipal employees.
Thank you.
That's great. Any other questions? I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Dan Horgan,
Aye.
Mike Stone, Eric Tolley,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. It carries. The consent agenda. Next item on the agenda is town administrator updates.
And I'll go first. I know Bob's got a couple of great items on here. Mine are quick. I wanted to just update the board on over the past week, we've established a rather robust dialogue with some of the officials of the town of Barnstable. I know we've been talking to the town manager's office. I know the chairman has had some outreach with town council members. And as a result of that dialogue, we're working on a joint letter with the town of Barnstable regarding the Mass Coastal Railroad and some of the problems with their equipment and the trash that we talked about a little bit last week. So I was absolutely delighted to, receive that type of support from Barnstable to work on this issue together. So we're working on a draft letter, and we'll have copies of that for board members and continue. I think having 2 towns put their heads together, it always gives us a little more clout. So that's moving forward. And just another, a couple of quick personal items. Last Friday, April 16, I conducted my first department head meeting with the whole team. And I just want to say it was a great experience, and it was tremendous to just see that group participating together. And I think we're going to get a lot done here in town. It's a great team, and I look forward to having many more regular department head meetings. And also last week wrapped up my facility tours of all of our town properties and departments, all of the remote ones, and even a pretty long number of just properties and facilities that we've been working on. So that felt real good, and things are moving ahead very fast. So just a couple of items from my regard.
That's great. Any board members have any items for the town administrator with respect to his update? Or
I have one, Bob. Robust is Mark's word, so you're going to have to find another.
Okay.
Eric doesn't miss a thing. I noticed that too, Eric.
You catch that?
I did. I didn't want to say anything though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. Duly noted. All right. Anything else? The final item on the agenda is adjourn. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Dan Horgan.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. In a robust way, of course. So thank you, everybody, for